Welcome back to another episode of Right Here in Mass. Joining me today is Alyssa Zonghetti, Certified Clinical Hypnotherapist. Through her hypnosis and coaching services, Alyssa is dedicated to empowering professionals to reclaim their confidence and self-worth, enabling them to awaken their best selves. In her practice, she provides a safe, judgment-free space for individuals to unlock the power of their subconscious minds, break free from old habits, and create lasting change in their lives. Alyssa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashley. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here, and I'm especially happy to have you here because we have not yet had a guest that does what you do. So I think this is going to be a
Oh,
really interesting and exciting conversation. And for our listeners, Alyssa's very extensive and impressive bio is in the show notes. But Alyssa, I'd love to give you the opportunity to just give an overview of who you are and what you do.
yeah, thank you. So, as you mentioned, I am a certified clinical hypnotherapist. And immediately people have this vision of what a hypnotherapist is, right? They think I'm going to wave a pocket watch at them, I'm going to control their mind and do all this weird stuff. That is not what a hypnotherapist is. What really a hypnotherapist does is work with people to change their mindset, whether it's creating habit changes, overcoming fears, and really tapping into what is that subconscious level, right? So we might have fear, or like I said, we're trying to overcome or something like that, but really trying to help you understand where it's coming from. That is really trying to determine that root cause. That's really where it comes into play because what's happening at the surface is much different than what's happening underneath everything. And so that's really what a hypnotherapist does is really partner with you to understand that, to understand where these fears are coming from, where your patterns are coming from, so you can work to overcome them.
And I think that is one of the many interesting things about what it is that you do is that you really focus on that root cause. So, like you said, people might have a certain block or have a certain fear or feel something specifically, but when they sit there and think about it, they don't really know where that came from or how it originated. And so I think it's really powerful that you work with them through that to really understand the cause of it so that way you can work towards having that solution.
Exactly. That's really where the lasting change will come from. We can all kind of white knuckle through things. We can all say, I'm not going to eat that cake this week and I'm not going to eat all those sweets. But that's not really where it comes from. There's a reason you're craving those. Is it's comfort food? Are you somebody that eats for motivation? Is it something that you eat for an emotional reason, right? Like trying to like tap into that, for example,
Mhm.
really understanding that so you can create the lasting change versus just trying to change at the surface.
Absolutely. And you just gave an example about how people might want to work through like why they eat certain things or indulge in certain things. What are other examples of blocks or fears that you kind of help people work through? Like, do you tend to have people who face like common things that tend to be pretty common around here? I'd love to hear more about that.
So I work with people on all kinds of things, from some of the basic things like fear of flying, fear of the dentist. I've worked with people on cell phone addiction. That has been a really kind of hot item
Wow.
this year, because we're all addicted to technology, whether we want to admit it or not.
Yeah.
So really, again, trying to figure out like why do we constantly pick up the phone? Why are we constantly scrolling Instagram? What void is it filling? So that's actually been a really popular one lately. But I think the biggest things that I work with people on is around their confidence. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of career professionals, and really a lot of people struggle with the confidence, being seen,
Mhm.
being the one to step forward in their business. I know you as a business owner, right? Like it takes a certain level of being willing to be seen, being out there, being vulnerable, finding your confidence. Most people are not confident deep
Right.
down. They might fake it really well, but most people have that imposter syndrome, right? We hear that buzzword all the time. So that is actually a really big topic that I work with people on is around that imposter syndrome, whether it be in their careers, in their businesses, as small business owners, or a lot of times just in personal relationships, whether it be in dating or what, right? We all suffer from this imposter syndrome in different areas of our lives.
Yes, and I love that you brought up imposter syndrome because, like you mentioned, that's a very prevalent challenge for entrepreneurs with just being able to work through and having that block can prevent you from moving forward. So it's like you almost get, I imagine, get stuck and can't really take that next foot forward because you're kind of within this go-between of this challenge that you're facing or roadblock that you can't really get through.
100% that you nail on the head, right? The stuck, getting stuck, we get in our way so often.
Mhm.
It's not about that you don't know enough or that you aren't skilled enough or you're not experienced enough. It's we get in our own heads, and that's why we get stuck because we're afraid to take action because we're like, what if we fail? What if we don't make the right choice? And so a lot of people just get stuck and don't do anything, or they do the same thing over and over, which is never going to create change.
Exactly. And so with that, I can also imagine that anyone who is stuck or has that roadblock might not even realize that they're stuck or has that roadblock. Like maybe if they've experienced it their whole lives, they just kind of take it as it is and don't even recognize that it might be a challenge that's coming up. I'm curious if that's something that you see happening a lot.
All the time.
Yeah.
Pretty basically every client. And it's funny, I'll use an example of somebody I was just working with, who was coming to me for her sugar cravings. And she is somebody who is pre-diabetic and she's trying to avoid going on medication and really trying to change her diet and her lifestyle. And she keeps referring to herself as a sugar addict and a cookie addict. And she's like, oh, I've been a sugar addict my whole life. I'm a cookie addict. I said, okay, well, we have to stop that language. You are creating this persona for yourself that is actually not there. And
Mm,
so people do this all the time, whether I'm not good at business, I'm not a good business owner, I'm not a good leader. We create these stories for ourselves that aren't true. But
yeah.
it's our brains trying to keep us safe by saying, oh, no, I don't know how to do that, so I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to step forward in that. But it's not true. So it's really changing the thought patterns around that to remove that block to say, no, actually, I can do this. This is why I'm great. And again, understanding where those underlying causes from come from. Again, that woman that I just mentioned, we really went back and realized it stemmed from her childhood, some different things that happened in her childhood
Mm,
and way food was brought into her home that we discovered it's like, well, this is why. It literally goes all the way back to her young childhood years. And when she's like, discovered that, she's like, oh my gosh, like I never thought of that. I thought I just liked sugar. And it's like, no, like that came from somewhere.
yes. And that's interesting that you bring up the piece about childhood home because I've heard a lot about like the habits that we have are inherited from our guardians or from our family. Like, for example, I hear this often about money. We pick up our money
Oh,
habits
yes.
from our family. And if we're scared to spend money or if we overspend money. So I'm curious if that's something that you see a lot in your work is just the reason why people feel blocked is just from things that they've kind of observed or witnessed from family members.
100%. Money is another big thing I work with a lot of people on, and I call it the money noise, right? So again, whether there that scarcity mindset that there was never enough money when you were growing up, or maybe money was very available to you, but now as an adult, it doesn't seem to be flowing to you, right? There's all kinds of things. If you came from a family that was savers, or maybe you came from a family of spenders that always spent and there was never enough, if something happened or an emergency came up, right? So we all have these different thoughts around money. And
Mm,
right, so that is in your subconscious. That has kind of imprinted at a different level that you may not even recognize or realize. And so again,
yes.
is really understanding that and then working to reprogram your thoughts around that because it is possible. That is the number one question I get asked all the time. It's like, well, if it's been like that since my childhood, I probably can't change it. It's like, no, actually, that's not true. You can absolutely make a change.
Yes, I love that. And so when someone notices this block that they might have, what are like the first steps that they should take? Like they recognize it, like how do you recommend that they move forward from there?
So there's different steps that you can take, but I really do, obviously, working with someone, right? Whether it's a
Mhm.
coach, a hypnotherapist, somebody in that space, because it really can help to, again, have this dialogue, have this conversation. Again, it happens all the time with clients that they realize once they're having the conversation, there's all these light bulbs that go off. You could just see it happen. And they're like, oh, you're right. Because it's a different perspective and you're looking at it a different way and they're posing different questions to you. So I'm definitely a big proponent of getting some kind of support around that. And then again, working to take action, really coming up with a plan. Because as I mentioned before, like trying to create change at the surface is only going to take us so far. If you want
Mm.
sustainable, long lasting change, we have to change at the subconscious. And what that means, I love to give this analogy to people because you hear this about the conscious mind, the subconscious mind. People don't know what that means. So if you envision a picture of an iceberg and then the water line, and then the iceberg deep under the water, Okay, our conscious mind is what's sticking up out of the water. So that's like our conscious thoughts. Um, and then you have the water level, and then underneath is everything deeper, right? So the under the water is our subconscious thoughts. Okay, that's where our patterns and beliefs come from. So our conscious mind is very different from the subconscious. And we, again, as you mentioned, we don't even really always know what's happening or that our subconscious mind is at play. If and another example I always give is if you're somebody that drives or travels to a place repetitively, and sometimes you just go on autopilot and you drive and you're like, how did I just get here? That is your subconscious mind at play because your subconscious
Mm.
mind knew where to go. It knew to take the right here, the left there. And, our minds focus on something else. Well, your subconscious mind is what got you there because you didn't need the conscious mind because you already know those patterns. So that's very much as what we're talking about when we're talking about the subconscious mind. It's getting to that deeper layer of something that's so ingrained in us that we don't even know what's happening.
I love that analogy. And when you work with clients through those blocks that they might be having, do you find that sometimes it then opens up other blocks or maybe makes them aware of other blocks, like kind of like chipping away at it, I guess is the best way to put it, and kind of unsurfacing it from there?
Yes, for sure. I think a lot of this bleeds over to other areas of our lives. I would say about 98% of the clients that I work with, no matter what they come to me for, their patterns and behaviors are rooted in one of three things or a combination of them, and that is self-love, self-worth, and self-confidence.
Mm.
And so, or lack of, I should say. And so, no matter what people are coming to me for, there is some of that at play. Like I said, it could be a combination of all three or one that's more prevalent than the other. But really, it's all rooted in those things. And again, that comes from, early on in our development, different experiences that we had. So, of course, if you lack self-confidence, for example, and that's going to impact your career. It's going to impact personal relationships, right? It can bleed over to all these areas. And so once we discover that for whatever maybe initial concern you come with, then you start to realize, oh, okay, this is bleeding into other areas of my life too.
Hmm. I love that. And when you're working with clients as well, do you find that being able to support them, and I'd say it probably does, like probably gives you like this really gratifying feeling. Like when you help a client, you're probably like, this is exactly why I do what I do.
100%. And so I'm somebody I went on a very deep personal journey. I'm to personal development, doing all the things. I've tried all the different therapies out there. I've been in talk therapy for years and I really worked at it. And like I go into therapy every week and say, okay, like I want to make the change, right? Like I don't want to just come here and talk about my problems. I want to create the change. And to the point that one of my therapists used to laugh at me, like every time I came in, because, I'd be like looking for my homework, right? Like, how are we fixing this problem? I don't want to just talk about it. And then that's when I really started to understand all these tools that are out there. There's all different kinds of tools out there to support us, and they can work really well and really fast. And that's what I love about hypnosis is it can happen. You could go to talk therapy for 2 years for the same problem. You could do, 4 or 5 hypnosis sessions and really start to see some lasting results. And so that's why I
That's
think it's so
amazing.
powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, knowing that you've gone on such an incredible personal development journey yourself, did you go through hypnosis yourself and that's what kind of opened you up to pursuing it as a career? Like, I'd love to learn more about how you got to where you are today because I think it's so fascinating.
Yeah, so my story is definitely unique. So I was actually a corporate event planner by trade. So
Wow, I did not
completely
know this
different.
about you.
Yes, yes. So I was an event planner for many years and through my work in events, I started, so really in 2020, I created a community, pandemic, we're all quarantined, and I started running events for women that were quarantined alone or were single at the time. And so that kind of developed into running this online community. And through that, I shared a lot about my story and my personal journey. And that turned into coaching. And as I was coaching these women, I was like, well, you know what? Like, I like the tools. I like to be able to execute and create things. So I want to be able to bring these tools to the women that I am working with. And so I was familiar with hypnosis and mindset work. You may hear the term NLP, which is neuro linguistics programming. Again, like words and language are very important. And so, having used a combination of all these tools through my journey, I'm like, okay, well, I want to get certified so I can bring these tools to the women in my community to be able to create this change for themselves. So that's
Mhm.
how it kind of came about. It was nothing I ever planned on. It was nothing that I had like this deep passion for initially. I was very passionate about helping and supporting women and to create change in their lives because that was something that was really important to me and things that I was experiencing in my life. So if I could help people shorten that path to change, I was all about it. And that's what led me to becoming certified in hypnosis.
That's amazing. And I feel like you're such a great like case study, you're a success study for your clients where you're like, I've been through this. Like I have the firsthand experience. And I think that probably makes your clients relate to you more and trust you more, knowing that that you have also gone through it as they work with you.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. A lot
Mhm.
of the things that I do work with clients on, especially again, being an entrepreneur myself, like I said, that's why a lot of the people that I do work with is because I've experienced it firsthand. And so
Mhm.
I can really understand what they're going through and what they're struggling with and helping them again get to that root cause so we can create some change for them.
Absolutely. And you gave a great example earlier about a client that you worked with who was pre-diabetic. I'd love to hear if you're able to share just any other really cool stories or clients that you've supported and kind of like what situation arose from it or why they needed to work with someone like you.
Yeah, so one that always sticks out for me was somebody that was experiencing chronic pain. She had suffered an injury and she needed to have some corrective surgery on her knee. And so she was working through rehab because they said, okay, we need to get to a certain point. She needed to get a certain range of motion in her knee to be able to even have this corrective surgery. And she couldn't get there. She was doing all the things in rehab, in physical therapy, and the doctors are like, there is nothing physically wrong with you. Like, we really believe this is the mind now at play. So she reached out and we did some hypnosis together. And again, we discovered where some of her fears were coming from around this. Because it was a recurring injury, her body was nervous because she knew what
Mhm.
she was going to have to face after surgery. So she had to rehab to be able to do surgery to have to rehab a second time. And so subconsciously, her mind was really fearful around that. Once we discovered that and were able to work through it, within 4 sessions, she was able to get to the range of motion that she needed and complete her surgery. And so it just really shows how closely the mind and body are connected. She was able to overcome the pain and also overcome the fear because it was all in her mind. It wasn't anything physical that was happening at that point.
Yeah, that's interesting that you brought up an injury example because that's one thing that I've seen having done sports growing up is, for example, I did cheerleading and I remember I had a friend who was doing a back handspring and got injured and then after that could no longer do a back handspring because she was obviously and understandably very scared about it. And so I think it's interesting to think about all these different situations and challenges that we might go through in our lives can be that mental block or can prevent us from moving forward or continuing to do something that we had until now always done.
Yeah, exactly. I actually loved the Olympics this summer because a lot of the Olympians are talking about all the mindset work that they're doing, hypnosis. Even Simone Biles talks a lot about it because, again, after falling at the previous Olympics and not having her best showing, she was really scared to be out there again. And
Mhm.
again, right, the mind can play a lot of tricks on us. And so I loved how they were talking about this, that it's not always about the physical ability, or like I said, with business owners, it's not always about the skill or the talent. A lot of it comes down to our mindset and what we believe we can and cannot do.
Yes, so true. And with that, do you have any like resources or tools that you recommend to clients as they're kind of going through and thinking about how they can kind of start to change and, like you said, change their mindset ultimately?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of great resources out there, right? Like if you go to YouTube and Google hypnosis for whatever's going on, you'll get a lot of returns. Um, and they can be great. There's a lot of different apps out there. Like Mind Valley is one. Even on the Calm app, like there's different apps out there that will have hypnosis as part of it. But I do highly, and those are helpful and those are beneficial. But everybody's a little bit different.
Mhm.
So, again, to really see that long term change, it really is great if you can seek out some one on one support to really create that change, to really figure out what's happening for you specifically, to really dive deep. I offer a lot of group workshops, for example, and people get some results and they feel good afterwards. But like if you really want to go there and really want to go deep, everybody's different. So one-on-one work is going to come into play. But if you're trying to experience what hypnosis even is, like I said, people have all these weird preconceived notions about what a session is. Here's an insider take. All it is guided meditation. So there's nothing to be afraid of. You are in complete control. Nobody's doing anything to you. You stay in complete control. So don't be scared to try. Go onto YouTube and find, or like I said, check out some of these free apps that are available and try a session and see what it's like and just experience what it's like to go through that guided meditation. Even on my own website, I have a free hypnosis session that you can check out just to experience it and see what it's like.
I love those suggestions. And on the topic of business owners specifically, you had mentioned earlier that imposter syndrome and money habits are things that you frequently see with business owners. What are some other examples or ways that you've supported business owners and being able to share why hypnosis really is such a great value to them, like the benefits of being able to prioritize that in their personal and professional development?
So I think the other big thing I always see is I may have mentioned this before, but being seen, right? It's hard as a business owner. We don't always want to be the face of our business too.
It's so
And that
true.
it's right. Like a lot of us are great at the work and we like the behind the scenes in the work, but also being our brand and being the face of the business is actually a very hard piece for a lot of business owners.
Mhm.
And again, there's a lot of this like, well, you're supposed to be, you're the business owner, you need to be the face of the company, but it's not easy for most people. And that is something that a lot of people struggle with. So I've worked with some clients on that. Again, there's one particular recent example of she's a professional. She sings on stage, she's a professional singer, and she also teaches singing. And she was afraid to be seen. Now, that is an industry like where you're literally on stage, you have to be seen. And it was really hindering her business and for her reaching the goals that she wanted to in her business to there was a lot happening there of what she wanted to accomplish and it was really holding her back. And she said, I know this is just all in my mind. And so we worked together and it was just so incredible to see such a shift. Once again, we could really tap in and see what was happening for her and really work to change her beliefs around being seen. She grew her TikTok following. She was booking all these gigs. She did a music video. Her singing lessons, like her class enrollment went up because she was confident about being seen. And we figured
Yeah.
out again what was hard for her, and because for everyone, again, that's going to be different. But what for her particularly was tough about being seen. I also worked with a client, fear of public speaking. That's another one that I like kind of equate, they go hand in hand and had an individual who was made fun of when they were a child for their voice. And they had held on to that all these years later as an adult and a professional that they didn't want to speak on a stage or in front of people because their little self was still thinking about being made fun of for their voice. And
Mm.
so, really, again, trying to figure that out and create change around that belief because that was one incidence of one person saying one thing to you as a child. Like
Yeah.
that is not truth. That is not, but they held on to that all those years. And so again, really trying to figure that out. Like, where did this come from? Where did those fears come from? Those beliefs come from? So we can figure out a way to reprogram it.
I love that. And you had mentioned so many times because it's such a great point that being able to really focus on these areas can improve all the relationships in your life. And I can imagine that when people kind of work through the challenges or roadblocks that they're facing, it makes them be a better business owner. It makes them be a better friend, a better daughter, sister, mother, whatever relationship it is. And I think it's really wonderful how just one change in one aspect just creates a ripple effect ultimately.
Yeah, and that's one thing I love, right? Like I tell clients this all the time. By you creating that change, you're not only creating ripple effects in your life, but in other lives, especially for
Yeah.
business owners, right? Like people need what you have. People need to learn from you. They need to hear your story. They need your product. They need your service. And so by you being more confident to put your business out there, put yourself out there, those are creating ripple effects far beyond that you can even imagine.
Absolutely. And also doing the work in that sense too, I feel like just from my own personal development I've done when something would go wrong, I used to always blame myself, but I feel like now I've become more receptive to the fact, well, it's not me. I might not necessarily be the problem, it might be the other person that might be having this conflict. And so I think it helps to become more aware and just not hold so many emotions close, which I think especially is what happens as women. We tend to really hold these things close and assume that we're always the one who's in the wrong or the one that's causing an issue.
Oh my gosh, 100%, right? A lot of women, we're perfectionists, we're high achievers, we're caregivers. We want to take care of everybody and do everything for everyone. And so we feel like the second, we're juggling 10 balls, the second we drop one, like we failed everything, right?
Yeah.
Like world is falling apart and we're so hard on ourselves.
hmm
And so I do think that is part of it because, again, we've been conditioned to believe we're supposed to do all the things, be everything to everyone, and do it all flawlessly. And that is not reality. And so again, like giving ourselves, I tell clients this all the time, like I give you permission. And not that I am truly giving them permission, but I want them to give themselves permission. They
Yeah.
need to hear someone say that to them for their subconscious to be like, okay, I have permission to, whatever it is, to release this thought, to let go of this behavior, to let go of this pattern. Like it is okay. Like sometimes we just need that confirmation to be like, yeah, it is okay.
Definitely. That's such a great reminder. And I think it's incredible that you've mentioned that you've supported clients in just as little as 4 to 5 sessions. I think that's unbelievable. And it makes me wonder, with hypnosis, do you view it as something that's kind of like an as needed basis where a client notices something that they might want to work through, or do you recommend doing it kind of like on a consistent basis to keep things moving forward, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so it's a good question because I get this all the time. Because there's a
hmm
lot of people out there that be like, oh, I can make you stop smoking in one session. Perhaps. I'm not saying that that can't happen, but again, if you've been a smoker for 20 years, it's not all going to probably be fixed in one session, right? Like it took us a
Right.
while to get there, so it's going to take a few sessions to really create this lasting change. So, depending on what it is, this is why I really encourage people to have a conversation with their practitioner that they are, looking to work with and really understanding so that practitioner understands what is going on for them so they can come up with a plan together. Do I need 3 sessions? Do I maybe need 6? Like, is this something a little more deep rooted? Is it something a little more surface? Like I said, when it comes to like food and stuff, like I tell people, it's going to take more sessions. Like that's something more deep rooted. Um, maybe, the fear of the dentist, that might be a little more surface, right? Like that just might be something that's not so deep rooted. So maybe we won't need as many sessions. But the more sessions that you can do in a shorter time frame, that's what I recommend to people. We don't want to be doing like a session once a month. Like you want to keep them, usually work with clients about every other week
Mhm.
for an extended period of time because we want to really keep reinforcing that change. And
Yes.
so then checking in with yourself, checking in with your practitioner to see what makes sense again for what you're working on. A lot of times, I'll work with clients on something and then they might come back a year later and be like, kind of need like a little boost, right? Like,
hmm
especially when it comes to confidence. I mean, we're constantly consuming information and being inundated by all these outside thoughts and resources. And so that can shake us a little bit again. So sometimes, we need that little boost and that's okay. I think some people this is not magic. Nobody's waving a magic wand at you. I can't snap my fingers and make things go away. But myself, other practitioners, we can guide you. We can help guide you to create this change. Again, you hold all the control. And very much like a fitness trainer, like I can't do the exercises for you, but I can tell you how to do them, how many reps, how often. I can guide you, but you're doing the work.
Yes, that's a great reminder. And I love what you mentioned too about some clients who might come back a year or so later because they need a boost because, like you said, things might be going on. And I imagine that that probably happens this time of year because as of the time of this recording, it's the holiday season and it gets darker earlier. And so I can imagine that that feelings and emotions resurface and people just need a little extra support, and that's okay.
It is okay. And that's the other thing. I think people are like, oh, I failed. I didn't, right? Like I didn't do my therapy well. I need you again. And it's like, no, that's not what's happening here. Like again, we're constantly getting out bombarded by all these outside influences. Like things might creep up again. And that's
hmm
okay. Like you said, it's the holiday season as we're recording this. And so every holiday season, I offer a group workshop around managing your anxiety and stress for the holiday season. Because that comes up for people every year. Even if we work through it, it's still something that's probably very deep rooted. And so it's okay to continue to seek some support. And it doesn't mean it wasn't successful or you didn't do anything right. It's okay if you need, additional support throughout.
100%. And you've mentioned that you offer one-to-one coaching and you have like the group workshops, the group programs. As we get closer to 2025, I would love to hear what's coming up on your radar of things that you might be offering or how you see yourself expanding in the next year or so.
Yeah, so I've been doing some strategy planning for myself and some dreaming for 2025. One thing I offer every January is a workshop, and I'm changing it up a little bit this year, but to help people intention set and to really create change, right? And in the new year, we hear a lot about goal setting and what we want to do and New Year's resolutions, which is a term that I cannot stand personally, right? Like to me, it's like New Year's resolutions, it's an automatic setup for failure because that's not creating
Mhm.
lasting, sustainable change. Again, to me, that's like the white knuckle approach that I'm gonna like, okay, I'm gonna try to make this change. And right, like everybody's in the gym on January 2nd, and by January 10th, the gym is empty again, right? Stuff like
Yep.
that. So I really wanted to create a workshop for people that's going to help them create the change. So again, understand some of the root causes and then do some hypnosis to help create that lasting change for themselves. So I'm really excited about that. Definitely people love the group workshops. I do think there is something special about creating some shared space. And right now I do it all virtually. I am giving some thought to doing some maybe in-person workshops this year
Ooh,
too,
exciting.
which I'm excited about. But I do think there is something powerful to sharing a shared space because if people are going through the same thing, it's comforting to know like, whew, okay, I'm not the only one struggling with this. So I'm
Yes.
looking forward to offering more group programming too.
Oh, so exciting. And on the topic of being able to support one another, one of my favorite questions to ask our guests is what their favorite local businesses are to support. And so I'm curious to hear what you'd recommend. And I feel like this is going to be a hard question for you to answer because I feel like you have a lot.
Yes, so I do. So I live in downtown Boston, and so there's so many great businesses. But I will one that I want to shout out that I think is so great. It's called the Silver Dove Tea Room. It's right here in downtown Boston, and it is just a wonderful business. They cater to those. It's a totally gluten-free tea shop. So if
Oh,
you're somebody that likes to go for high tea or enjoys sweets, everything is gluten-free there. And so anyone I've ever gone there with is completely floored because it's hard to find delicious things that are gluten-free. And I'm not a
yes.
gluten-free person per se, but it's a place where you can again celebrate and enjoy something that may not be readily available to you if you do have dietary challenges. So they're really great meeting people's dietary needs. So
Mhm.
that is one business I love to shout out. And another one, maybe a little like non-traditional, but it's the Boston Athenaeum. So I am a member. It is a private library, so it's not a typical business, but I think it's a hidden gem here in Boston. And I think a lot of people don't know about it. I'm born and raised here, and I didn't know about it until about 4 years ago. And it's this beautiful space. There's a lot of history there. You can go in as a non-member to explore and go on tours. There's so much historic artifacts and books there. There's Washington's library, like book collection is there in the library.
Wow.
Like there's so many cool things that you can see. There's so much history here in Boston.
Mhm.
And so to me, that's just a hidden gem that a lot of people don't know about. So I love to spread the word to more people so they know that that's something interesting to come check out in the city.
Yes, I love that you shared that because we should all always support our local libraries for sure.
Yes, I am a big proponent about supporting libraries for sure.
Yes, amazing. Alyssa, this has been an incredible episode, and I've really enjoyed having you on the show to share more about yourself and what you do. And now I would love to give you the opportunity to share where our listeners can find you online in case they'd like to reach out.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was such a great conversation. I always love just sharing about hypnosis because I feel like not a lot of people know about it
Mm.
and how actually available it can be to you and how easily, like I said, I work virtually with clients. So you could be anywhere in the world and work with a hypnotherapist. So I encourage people to check it out. If you go to my website, so the name of my business is called A to Z Hypnotherapy. Yes, that's a play on my initials. Um, and if you go to my website, so it's atozhypnosis.com. And if you go there, you can learn about hypnosis. You can learn about the work that I do. As I mentioned, I actually have a free download you can check out so you can actually experience a free hypnosis session, which is great. Like I said, it gives people an idea of what to expect during a session. And yeah, there's just a lot of great information there. I have a blog on there too, so you can learn more about hypnosis, mindset work, and different tools that there are available to support you as you continue to go on your own personal development journey.
Fabulous. And I will link to your website in the show notes as well, so that way our listeners can click through and see everything that you're doing from there. But Alyssa, thank you so much again for being a guest on today's podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.